Good afternoon. Welcome to our first episode of Season 3 of Talk Story with House Majority. My name is Della Al-Baladi and I'm the House Majority Leader. Today is March 7th, 2022, and it's been an amazing last 2.5 years. Today is an auspicious day. We learned just recently that Red Hill will be shutting down permanently, according to the Pentagon. So much has happened since the beginning of this year, and even today was another great day because of the opening of the Capitol to the public. As COVID restrictions fall, there's much going on and there's much to talk about. Our first interview today is with Governor David Ige, and I was able to chat with him. So let's dive right into his conversation where he talks about lessons learned from the pandemic, his thoughts on the recent corruption, and the sustainability and work initiatives of his administration. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me here at Talk Story with House Majority. I have a very special guest here today, our very first guest of our first episode of Season 3, Governor David Ige. Governor, thank you for joining us.
Wow, thank you for making the arrangements. I certainly enjoy every opportunity I can to talk with the public.
So we're here at the state capitol. We're both vaccinated, we're both boosted, and we can take off our mask. Sure. Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us. You know, this is Season 3 of Talk Story with House Majority. You were on our Season 1, so yes. Thank you again for joining us. We've been doing this for 3 years, and I personally am exhausted from the pandemic, and I just wanted to ask you, looking back on the last 2 to 3 years, what are your thoughts on where we are?
You know, this pandemic has definitely not been like anything we ever could have imagined. I still recall going to the National Governors Association meeting in 2020, early in January, February, and getting a briefing from Homeland Security. And the whole focus was about that this is serious, you know, it will have significant impact. But I don't think anybody thought that 2 years later we would still be fighting COVID. I mean, it's night and day. It's a very different environment than we are here today than it was at the very beginning. But, you know, all of us thought a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. Certainly, I don't think anybody thought it would be 2 years.
So going back to that first governor's meeting, I mean, Hawaii was one of the first states to actually act, from what I can recall, in yes. February and March. What were some of those talks like? What did you learn from the other governors?
I think it was a couple things that became clear. It was very clear with President Trump that we shouldn't count on federal action. Mm-hmm. He made it very clear that that they weren't going to be driving it from the federal government, even though some of his public health experts were talking about how serious the virus was going to be. So that really motivated us, as you know, testing, mm-hmm. being 2,500 miles away from anybody. When we had to send samples back to Atlanta, we knew that we wouldn't get results back for 5 to 7 to 10 or 14 days. Mm-hmm. And getting the lab certified, and you know, the state lab was one of the first state labs to get certified to be able to test for the coronavirus, and that was very, very important. As you know, mm-hmm. you know, we couldn't wait 3, 7, 10, 14 days in order for us to get a response back. We needed to be able to take action much, much quicker. So
I can recall those early days. We shut down.
Yes.
We could still come to the Capitol. We were still trying to figure out how we were going to legislate. You were governing. We had thousands of people out of work. We come back for numerous sessions, and we're just staring at each other, and the economy is at a standstill. I mean, what was it that gave you hope in that time, maybe in late 2020?
You know, I think it was a couple things that I could see happening. Clearly, I knew that when I ordered the 14-day quarantine for all incoming travelers, that the economy would screech to a halt. Mm-hmm. And certainly, you know, many in our community would be out of work. But, you know, Della, as you know, as we were working through those early days when we had no treatment, we were trying to ramp up testing because we were very limited in testing, and there was no vaccine. The focus really was on public health and thinking through what things would we need to be able to do. Like you said, right? Every organization had to reinvent everything that they did. So how do you have public hearings? How do we communicate with the public? A lot of our public servants had to do other things just because we had to respond to the pandemic. And so I think what gave me hope, Della, in the early days is that everybody was willing to listen, to do whatever they could do to help. And there was not a whole lot of bickering or infighting that you saw in other jurisdictions. I think everybody was committed to be part of the solution and to find whatever way they could be helpful. I spoke with hotels in the early days and talking through what it would look like. We didn't know that we would shut down travel for 6 months or 8 months. And just talking through that, I didn't know was difficult for them, but they were really focused on employees. And it was remarkable that virtually every employer kept their employees on, even though they were shut down. I think in Hawaii, we appreciate that access to health insurance is a right, not a privilege, right? And it was remarkable to see organization after organization thinking about how they could keep their employees safe, how they could keep them covered with health insurance. Obviously, many wanted to keep them working, but that just wasn't possible. And so, in Hawaii, we know that when there's an emergency, the public responds and the community responds. And I think that is what gave me hope that eventually we would get through this.
I would echo that because I think across the islands, we saw community, government, the private sector, the nonprofit sector really come together. So the game changer really was vaccines.
Absolutely.
And can you speak a little bit about that and what we know now about vaccines and where we're going to go from here?
Sure. I do think the game changer was vaccines and the fact that it became available. We knew that vaccines would become available in late 2020. As you know, we began the pre-travel testing, Safe Travels Hawaii, that we started to plan in the summer,
Yes.
right? We finally got to the point in October where we could roll it out and allowed Trans-Pacific travelers who got tested as part of the trusted testing partners to be able to travel to Hawaii, and that helped get more people back to work. Today we have 2 very good vaccines. The availability is very good. We had during this pandemic over 400 sites that people could get vaccinated, and we even worked with pharmacies to be able to make house visits. When was the last time the health industry actually made house visits? But for those who were shut in and had no access, we did make arrangements to offer the vaccine to anyone who wanted to be vaccinated. And, I'm proud that Hawaii is in the top 10 states across the country. When I checked the statistics this morning, we're at 76% fully vaccinated and 83% initiated. So it certainly protects us as a community.
And I think that's a really important message, that we vaccinate not just for ourselves, but also to protect the population as a whole. So you've made some recent announcements, and it looks like the COVID restrictions are going to drop, and we're going to continue to live with this new normal. What can we expect moving forward with the economy, with public health, with anything that's in Hawaii now that we're hopefully post-pandemic or endemic stage now?
Right. I think us as individuals, organizations, and businesses have really done a much better job of learning to live with the virus. I think as employers, we got to remember that when employees are symptomatic, that they need to stay home. And that should be the standard, but obviously a lot of us, and I'm guilty myself, tough it out when you're not feeling so good because, the focus is on getting the work. We know that we need to focus on health, especially in office settings and others, so that we can keep each other healthy. So we do know that we have greatly expanded testing capability. The availability of inexpensive rapid tests at home really allows us to take some control over that whole process. If we feel we've been exposed, we can get a result back in 15 minutes and know whether we're positive or not. We have much better therapeutics. There are a couple of monoclonal antibody treatments that we know, if administered early on in the infection, has tremendous results. And as you know, we are seeing now, Della, pills, antiviral medication that are as effective as some of the monoclonals that you can take orally. And as you know, President Biden announced in his State of the Union a brand new test and treat program, and they want to have pharmacies who are able to test if someone is positive to COVID. They want them to be able to take the antivirals right there and take them home so they can begin treatment right away.
So we've really advanced with science through this, either the vaccines or the treatments, and now we know that we can tackle this disease.
Right, absolutely. And Della, it's really about taking the lessons learned during this public health pandemic. I think it's everybody doing their small part. I mean, we never really thought about work cohorts and about trying to make sure that we at least am aware of the interactions between employees, so that should someone have an infectious disease, we can do contact tracing and isolate and really keep everybody safe. I think all of the organizations and businesses will carry some of that forward because we've learned that it makes a difference. And I do think that it helps us all learn to live with COVID. Even though the case counts will be with us, even though we know we have to be prepared for the next variant that surges in our community, I think we all know the actions that we can take to reduce the spread of the virus and keep each other healthy and safe.
I really like that because it's about all of us doing it together as a community. And I think that's one of the big takeaways I have from how we were able to work through this pandemic. So, given your years of experience, Governor, and I hate to change the subject because this is actually not a comfortable subject for me, but because of the recent corruption cases, you and I have both been in the legislature for a long time. How do you think we go about regaining the trust of our community in light of the very troubling corruption cases we're hearing about now?
It certainly was a shock to me, as I know it was to you, to hear about the recent situation with Senator English and Representative Cullen. It paints all elected officials in a bad light. I know that all of us really choose to pursue elective office to really serve the public. I do think that there are some things that we need to do, and I think we do it naturally every day as how we believe we serve the public. I know you do frequent town meetings and broadcasts and engagements like this. I think transparency is very important, being able to face the public and engage and respond to questions when asked. I think that's really important. I do think it is about redoubling our efforts to engage the community and in a person-to-person way. I'm hopeful that the COVID surge has passed us and we can get back to in-person town meetings instead of virtual meetings, because I do think it makes a difference. It does make a difference, Della, when you can be in a cafeteria with your community and face them directly and answer questions. I think that makes a big difference. And so I think we need to do more of that. I know you guys are looking at some of the campaign reforms, and I think that that might be helpful. Unfortunately, in elected politics, campaign money makes a difference. And, I wish that Citizens United didn't happen. I think that's really skewed the influence of money, because virtually, super PACs have virtually unlimited budgets, and we don't know who's making those contributions. So I think that that has really stressed the overall system. I know that we've tried to take action in the state of Hawaii to limit or at least provide more transparency for super PACs. I wish the Congress would act, because clearly I think that Supreme Court decision was wrong. But I think in light of all of those things, we need to do what we can. I think it's about increased transparency. I do think it's about trying to manage the elective campaign process the best that we can. And then it really is about facing the community and being available, accessible, and transparent.
I think we're going to have some really tough conversations over the next couple of months, and there will be some policy discussions. So I really appreciate your insight, Governor, especially because of the length of time that you've been in office, and also because I know that you are committed to transparency and ethical government. So my last question, Governor, for you, and thank you again for spending this much time with me, but what are the policy accomplishments you're most proud of over the last 7 years of your administration?
Della, as we said, I do think that part of why I have hope in this COVID battle is because we always come together as a community. I think the biggest impact that Hawaii has had, especially in the last few years, is our leadership when it comes to sustainability and fighting climate change. I was able to go to Scotland and to COP26, and I was proud to be governor of Hawaii because we can talk about not only the high impact actions that we believe we're willing to take. It really was about encouraging the entire world to recognize that each and every person and organization can make a difference if they choose to. And Hawaii being the first state in the country to commit to 100% renewable energy for electricity. I still remember going to the governor's conference in 2016 and many governors asking me, are you crazy? I mean, really, how do you guys think you'll do it? And today there's 12 other states that have followed Hawaii's lead. And I'm proud that in 2018, Della, we became the first state to commit to net negative, because we knew that after 4 years of working to be a net zero, we know that net zero is not good enough to save the planet. It really is about getting to net negative and protecting our natural resources, protecting our forest, reforesting those areas that may have been damaged due to other uses in the past, and really protecting our oceans. Our commitment to a sustainable Hawaii is the foundation for climate action. I know that it's not about Governor Ige taking those actions, right? It's about the state of Hawaii. It's about the legislature enacting laws that allows us to set the policy. It's about talking about the counties to join us. It's about being willing to say, we're taking this action, California, Oregon, Montana, are you guys gonna follow our lead? And then going to Stockholm and really asking the world, saying, look, we've taken this action and it hasn't penalized our economy. It hasn't been a burden for our community. You can take these and establish these aggressive goals, and you can achieve them without impacting your jobs or your economy or other actions.
I can remember when we were talking about the 2050 sustainability plan, and it was maybe like 2010, right?
Yes.
Or 2014. And so any thoughts on that piece of it? Because that is actually going to go far into the future beyond your administration, any thoughts on the 2050 plan and what's going to happen with those efforts?
I mean, I do think, and Della, we are implementing the 2050 plan. I mean, there's nothing in, the policies that we've enacted that is not consistent with the 2050 plan. The plan at its core is about every facet of our economy, of our community, being really focused on resiliency and self-reliance. The whole notion of food sustainability. We saw during this pandemic how vulnerable we can be because we still import so much food. But over the last several years, we've just seen a tremendous increase when we focus on the goals. I know that the Department of Agriculture had published a study that we actually got to 90%. We expanded local food production by 90%. My goal was 100%, doubling local food production. But, so we failed, but we started and changed the trajectory. So I can see a tremendous acceleration. From a layperson's perspective, I remember going to Costco 5 or 6 years ago, and there was no local vegetables on sale. And I was there over the weekend, and you can get lettuce, leafy green lettuce from White Foley Gardens. You can get eggplant. You can get cucumbers. You can get so many things locally, and it's really been because we, as policymakers in the legislature, set up ambitious goals, and we've really redirected a lot of energy that is consistent with the 2050 sustainability plan. It's about stop sending money out of state to create jobs elsewhere. It's really about trying to invest in ourselves and our community. So, I think, if I had to summarize the 2050 plan in a nutshell, that's what it's about. It's about being committed in everything that we do to be self-reliant. So it is about local food production. It's about, asking all of our businesses, what can you do to hire a local consultant instead of going to a mainland consultant? And how do we build those capacities in state instead of always looking for the lowest cost provider? What we need to do is look for the highest quality local provider and then help them be more successful, because that's what will make a difference as we start talking about 2050 sustainability.
So I'm listening to you, Governor, and I hear you channeling Governor John Burns and about the resiliency and what's the best thing about this place. It's the people of Hawaii. Absolutely. That's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. And Della, it's your coming to Hawaii is probably different than mine, but there are so many similarities that it overwhelms the differences. My grandparents came to Hawaii with nothing, from Japan and Okinawa, and your grandparents came from someplace else. But it really is about being committed and seeing the hope that Hawaii represented, that their families would find a better future by coming here. And then after getting here, it's about understanding that education is the great equalizer. That, if you invest in education for your children, they will have better and more opportunities than you ever did. And it's about being committed to leaving a better Hawaii for the next generation than they receive, because they want to make a difference. It's that sense of community that shows up every time there's an emergency or disaster, the willingness to do whatever they can, willingness to, even with people who without much, but they're willing to give everything they have in order to help the community. And, I think that that's what makes Hawaii a very special place. That's what allows us to be successful during these crises. And I think that that's what makes me feel best about the 2050 plan. It really is about being committed to each other and being willing to invest in our community so that we can all end up with a better Hawaii for everyone.
So I feel like that's the last thing that needs to be said. And Governor, it was really inspirational to hear you, because I know you have had a very rocky and tough 8 years, but it seems like this is going to be a high note for you. So I really appreciate everything. And if you wanted to say any final words to the people of Hawaii, please.
No, I mean, I just really want to thank all the people of Hawaii. Yes, this last 2 years were really difficult for all of us. You know, being willing to sacrifice, you know, key life milestones. I cannot imagine the challenges of having to skip a graduation or a first birthday. I know so many who postponed their weddings because of the COVID pandemic. But I do believe that we all came through it together. And as long as we remember that we are better together than separate, I know that the future of Hawaii will be much better than any of us ever imagined.
Thank you so much, Governor.
Absolutely.
Aloha and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my talk with Governor Ige as much as I did. Building on the conversation about corruption and the recent corruption scandal, I have today here with me the Honorable Daniel Foley, retired Associate Hawaii Intermediate Court of Appeals Judge. Judge Foley has been tasked by the House of Representatives, the Hawaii House of Representatives, to lead a special committee to look into campaign ethics, lobbying, and other rules and laws to address the recent corruption scandal that is rocking our community. I want to jump right in with some questions for Judge Foley. Judge Foley, you know, respected member of the judiciary, lawyer of high esteem. You know, you've been in public service for a long time. What were your initial thoughts as we've learned about the recent corruption scandals rocking all levels of government here locally, both with the Kealoha scandal, the corruption at counties, and with the legislature?
You know, I think, like many people, I was shocked. What happened with the chief of police, his wife, Catherine Kealoha, the prosecutor's office, the building and permits department, and then in particular the two bribery cases in the House and the Senate. I knew Kalani English. I never saw that one coming. I've been dealing with the legislature and state government since I was a ACLU lawyer in 1984. And one of my first cases was corruption in the judiciary and the legislature. You may remember Tom Fatboy Okuda, ticket fixing, food, fundraisers the judiciary was performing for the legislature to have their bills treated properly. And I represented the whistleblower in that case. But good things came out of it. They had a blue ribbon commission, they had reform, and they moved the sheriff's department where the corruption was out of the judiciary. And then I wrote the Whistleblower Act with Fred Hemmings and Ian Lynn. So even though that was bad, something good came from it. I represented the Safe Sandy Beach Coalition when there was corruption at Bishop Estate, and this concerned Bishop Estate land. And they had sort of a stranglehold on the city council and the state legislature. But ultimately, we won that case, and the Bishop Estate was reformed. So sometimes you can change poison into medicine. You take a very unfortunate, outrageous incident and reform the system. And I think that's what House Resolution 9 charges my commission to do. So I'm entering it with a very positive attitude with a wonderful group.
Can I pause there for a minute, because I think what you say is really important, that you can turn something bad into something good, and that what it is democracy is a work in progress. You know, we have to always hold each other accountable, and community groups in those instances you talked about did that. And so that's what in some ways that this committee is going to be doing. When you got the call from Speaker Saiki in the House, what was your thoughts about this Blue Ribbon Committee?
Well, I know Speaker Saiki. He's my former law school student, my civil rights litigation class. And I collaborated with him and Tom Kaufman on the Eddie Nakamura biography. And just a couple of years ago, he asked me to be on a task force he put together to improve the judicial selection process, to make it more open, to make it more accountable. And so when he called me up and asked me to do this and told me what he had in mind in the group I'd be working with, you know, as a private citizen, how can you say no? You know, I accepted special master for the state Supreme Court on the prison system for COVID, and recently for the federal court for COVID. When I see people out there on the front lines working to protect the public health, when someone asks you to do something, how can you say no? So whether it's COVID or whether it's corruption, you know, it's just, I'm not going to turn my back and walk away.
I so appreciate that, because it speaks to our citizen democracy. So can you tell me a little bit about the task of the committee, the members? You have a stellar committee of 7 people, and what your timeline might be.
Okay, the House resolution recognizes there's a lack of trust in government, and government has to do better. And so it put together this commission to look at specifically the ethics code, campaign spending laws, the lobbying laws, and other areas, and put together people with expertise. Robert Harris, who's the vice chair from the Ethics Commission, Kristen.
I think he's executive director now. Robert Harris is executive director, yes.
And he's vice chair of our commission.
Oh, okay.
And Kristen Izumi Naito of the Campaign Spending Commission, Sandy Ma of Common Cause Hawaii, Janet Mason of League of Women Voters, a wonderful group, former U.S. Attorney and Deputy Prosecutor Flo Nakakuni, and Barbara Maramoto, a very respected former Republican member of the House. So these people bring tremendous amount of experience on the subjects of House resolution. Now the problem we have is that our interim report is due March 31, and our first meeting was February 22nd. So we figured, how can we give the legislature something this early? Our second report is due December 1, so we have more than enough time. So what we decided to do was, well, let's look at what these 4 groups have been doing. What bills have they been tracking over the last couple of years, testifying on, bills they support, bills they oppose, bills that the legislature may have an opportunity, although it's late in the game and tight deadlines, to take a look at. And then other areas and other bills. To give you an example, like one bill that's going through is Senate Bill 555 on accepting campaign contributions during a session. I think it's moved over to the House or moving to the House. So that's a bill that's moving. Some of these groups have opinions on, so why not take a look at that one? There's another area like term limits. That requires a constitutional amendment. That may not be for this session, but we could kick it down for our final report due December 1. Those are kind of our deadlines. Now, one of the areas is how do we get more input from the public, various community groups, other groups with expertise, individuals. It's really difficult to do it before March 31. We're meeting weekly, and we're talking on the phone, and we're emailing. We're really trying to deliver something meaningful to the legislature. But after our March 31 report, we'll make that public, and then we'll reach out to the public to get their general input, reach out to the media that covers the legislature, what do you think, and start spending those months after your session in coming up with something more substantive.
Well, what I wanted to share with you is that at a recent neighborhood board meeting, the McCully Neighborhood Board, this issue came up. So I think that when you put out the call, there are going to be people who want to speak up. And I think that the timing of the process is good because we want you, I believe, and I think you would want to as well, take the time to really kind of hear from the community. So I appreciate that. Did you want to comment on any of your, you also have, I think, former Representative Barbara Maramoto on the committee. Did you want to comment any more on some of the other things that you might be looking at longer term?
You know, it's disclosure, transparency, limits on campaign contributions, but there's some big issues that are problematical. We have Citizens United, decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, that allows these political action committees, otherwise known as PACs, to spend unlimited funds as long as there's no coordination with a campaign. And we, how do you deal with that? When I was a civil rights lawyer, the city council in Honolulu passed an ordinance prohibiting lobbyists from making campaign contributions. Sounded great, right? But they defined lobbyist as anyone who receives a discretionary permit, and they described candidate as anyone who had filed for office. So basically, incumbents don't file until the last minute so they could get the contributions. People challenging incumbents couldn't, so I challenged that in court, and I had it overturned by Judge Kevin Chang because state law preempted the county from doing that. But at that time, I also had the opportunity to look at some real First Amendment issues, speech and association. So not everything you want to do is easy. You just can't cap expenditures across the board. So how to do that?
One of the things the resolution also calls for is to look to best practices in other states.
Absolutely.
The Brennan Center of New York that does a lot of good work on good government. So you'll also be doing that?
Absolutely. And even in terms of your rules, the House rules, I don't know if the Senate wants us looking at their rules, but we may. Looking at, other state legislatures, what do they do? Do they have any particular rule that's open, transparent, and workable? When I chaired the task force for appellate review, changing the whole appellate system, that's exactly what we did. We looked at every state system. How does it operate? Best practices. We've done that with judicial selection. The way we do that, looked at every other state best practices. So that's exactly, and people like Campaign Spending Commission, Ethics Commission, League of Women Voters, Common Cause, have a lot of experience doing this, access to that, and they'll have valuable input.
So we're about rounding up on our time here. Is there any last takeaway message that you'd like to share with the public about the work of your committee?
Absolutely, and a little broader. There's a lot of cynicism about the whole legislative process, about state government, about county government. And, I've been fighting big battles all my life as a civil rights lawyer. When I filed the case same-sex marriage, 91, everybody said, ridiculous, no way, public against it. Now all 50 states have marriage equality, 30 countries. So a lot of people, don't be despondent, don't give up. Now's a perfect opportunity under this resolution with this commission to become involved. We want you to become involved. We'll be reaching out to you. Be positive, be optimistic. Now's the time for change, and I think we can do it.
Thank you so much, Judge Foley. I'm looking forward to your report in March as well as in December.
Okay.
And on that note, I really like this can-do attitude and participation. So for our next community segment, even though it's a little bit of a segue, I was able to interview and talk with Executive Director Paula Akana at the Iolani Palace, where they're doing some very interesting things as we come out of COVID. Please join me in our spotlight of Iolani Palace. I'm so lucky to be here today with Paula Akana, Executive Director of Iolani Palace. Tell me what it's been like for the last 2 years.
Oh boy, it has been a whirlwind, and it's been just ups and downs, and the closure came and we realized we had no rainy day fund with the Friends of Iolani Palace. That's just not how it had been operated, and so it was pretty devastating.
So you folks were closed down for how long, and when were you able to start reopening?
We were closed for 3 months, and then we reopened. Then we had another closure for a month statewide, so about 4 months total. We used that 3 months to just learn as much as we could. We had staff that were just checking out everything on the CDC and the Department of Health and taking a look at what other museums were trying to do and what was going on in the museum world. And I think we were really fortunate for the things we had already put in place. So when we were able to open up, we were ready. And we were pretty strict but people felt really comfortable. But initially, we had no visitors, and so it was bringing out that kahea, that call to the local community to come and support the palace and support all of our cultural institutions. I think a lot of the people felt that they weren't kind of comfortable coming in because it had always been overrun by visitors. So we really tried to encourage them to come and explore now, and they did, and that was really our saving grace, was the Hawaii community coming together to help us.
Were you able to take care of some renovations or any kind of important projects that were kind of delayed because of the shutdown?
A couple of things happened with the shutdown. I mean, unfortunately, we had to lay off almost half the staff. And we brought back maybe 3 positions because that hasn't come through. But what we did do during that time, we did a lot of deep cleaning, which we really hadn't been able to do. And then we took a look at some of the projects we wanted to do but never had time to look at. And one was bringing our retail store online. And so it launched online, and that has been really good.
Tell me the website so people can go see it.
www.iolanipalace.org.
Okay.
And you can look for the store. We have our retail stores great there. But what we also did was we tried to take a look at some of the things we wanted to do program-wise that we hadn't been able to. And one of those ideas was to do, we have an audio tour in 7 languages, and then we have docent-led tours. But we always had thought about, what about some specialty tours? So we launched higher price point specialty tours that are smaller, numbers of like 4 to 6. One is a white glove tour. We tour the palace with our historian, Sita Kapchoi, which is an awesome thing to do. And then you actually go upstairs, don a white glove, and our collections people show you how to care for some objects.
So it's really a learning experience.
It's a learning experience, and people love that one. We also have Meiji Emperor Tour, and that really talks about Kalakaua's trip to Japan.
Oh, wow.
And how it kind of opened the door for a lot of the relationships we have with Japan today. We do a Chamberlain's tour, where our 2 gentlemen dress like the Chamberlain. So we were able to kind of take a look and put together these tours that have really helped us.
I'm a former history teacher, so I just love this. And these are tours that locals can also sign up for.
Yes, anybody. And we suggest that everybody go online to sign up.
Okay.
We still have people who walk up for tickets, but we are trying to do everything online. And we still kind of have a limit to the number of people. We haven't got back up to full scale. We used to be open 6 days a week. We're going to stay at 5 because the place needs to rest. And that gives us time to do the cleaning and everything that I think wasn't really done when we were open 6 days a week. So go online, take a look at what we have, and it's really exciting.
I love how you're talking about this place, and it's really a caretaker. You are a caretaker. The people of Hawaii are a caretaker for this very, very special place. Now, I'm super excited because restrictions are relaxing, and you have partnered with other local museums. Tell me about Triennial and some of the exciting things that you folks are doing in the future.
So the Triennial was a really neat project. When they came to us and asked if we'd be part of it, I was so excited. Number one, I think this is a huge piece of art. We have beautiful works of art within the palace, and I think people forget about that because they come through and they learn the history of Hawaii and the greatness of the Hawaiian Kingdom and then the sadness of the overthrow. But they don't really tune in on some of these remarkable pieces of art that were either gifts to our li'i or Kalakaua when he went around the world. He purchased all kinds of things. They originally said, well, we want to project maybe the Queen's words on the palace. It kind of sounds interesting. And then they ended up with the Queen's flowers from her garden. And it was just spectacular.
It was stunning. Do you have any idea of how many people maybe came through? I mean, I saw it like lighting up my Instagram feed.
Most of the people were outside looking in. We did some special tours the first 2 nights, which was the Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday was the kickoff evening. Other than that, the grounds were closed because it had to be total darkness in the front in order for the projection to work. And so for security reasons, the gates were closed. Now there's talk about maybe there's some way we could bring it back every quarter or at least during certain times of the year if the artist is willing and if we can get people to fund the projection. It was a pretty costly thing that they put together. But I think it helps to tell that story of the overthrow and the enduring love that people have for Liliuokalani. Just in seeing these flowers. Plus it was really cool. And I really think, especially Kalakaua, would have been jazzed to see something like that.
Oh, with electricity and the ability of electricity to project that.
And then what we're kind of doing, which is really interesting, it's called the Gathering Project. So for one Friday in each month of the 3 months of the triennial, it's closed, and then people sign up ahead of time, and you come in and you're put in little groups of like 8 people, and then they just talk about different subjects. And the thought behind it is, Flakawa was always holding meeting. He was like the networking king, but he brought people in specifically to learn and talk. And so we kind of thought, this is a really neat way of maybe bringing the palace to a different level than just a tourist attraction or a visitor attraction. So people were talking about Red Hill. People were talking about Mauna Kea. People were talking about art in the Pacific and how art heals. People were talking about how do we work with the communities that need the most help. And so a lot of it ties into what our Li'i did. And so they were able to sit in those rooms and feel the mana of this remarkable place and then just talk story.
So what I love about that is that it's dialogue and community conversation that matters, and it's in such a sacred place, and so there's meaning to it. And you're bringing the palace alive. So I just love this opportunity to talk story with you now, and that this is going to be something that you said is going to happen in March and April, and the public.
So the public can come out. We'll send you all the info so you can put it out to the public on what days and where to sign up and so forth. And it's something that maybe we'll try to work in to our business plan on how we can do that and make that happen.
I think that we can look to the past for a way forward, and that's what I really love about the work that you're doing, Paula, with Iolani Palace. So if you wanted to leave our viewers with one last message, what would you like to share with them?
I hope you'll come and visit our palace. It's your palace. It's the people's palace. So many people come up to me and say, I haven't been there since I was in 4th grade, and they're my age. So you really need to come and see. We have some remarkable cultural treasures here at the palace to see, and new things as well. For those who haven't been here in even the past year or two, you'll see new things in there. So just come and enjoy, and that's a way to support. You can become a member of the Friends of the Iolani Palace as well, and just help us as we perpetuate this place, we protect it, we restore it, and share its story with the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Talk Story with House Majority. Building off our wonderful conversation with Paula Akana at Iolani Palace, I have here today with me Chair Cedric Gates of the House Committee on Art, Culture and Arts and International Affairs. Because we're here at the Capitol, we can both take off our mask if you feel comfortable doing that. Both of us are vaccinated. And the Capitol is just reopening to the public. So Chair Gates, thank you so much for joining me in person. I wanted to ask you, what are your priorities for your committee as we come out of COVID?
Yeah, thank you for having me as well, Majority Leader. Right now, one of the things that we're trying to do with our committee is really try to connect our state and our islands to the rest of the Pacific. And how we are doing that is having these discussions with our peers across all these different islands across the Pacific. But the conversations have been really great. We also have the Creative Resurgence Committee Task Force that we enacted last year to come up with ideas, and these were some of the ideas that we had as well.
Now tell me about the initiative with Hawaiian language, because that was something that you've been working on for a while in Culture and Arts, and coming out of seeing that great segment on Iolani Palace and how we're really kind of looking back at history and remembering what's going on with Hawaiian language initiatives.
Yeah, so cool story about this bill. It came about after having a conversation with Chief Justice Reckenwall, and he said he just came back from New Zealand and he visited their courts, and he said that at their courts they would have it in writing, the Maori language, as well as audio. So when they would be calling out for defendants or whatever the case was, they would actually have both the normal English as well as Maori language as well.
So you're looking to integrate Hawaiian language in all the state communications and things like that?
Correct. And so from that conversation, we said, let's try to do it across the board, because if our judiciary system can do it, why can't the rest of our government? And so I thought that also pay homage to our host culture, our Hawaiian community as well. So that was something that I'm glad to see has been moving through the legislature, and it's now on the Senate side, waiting for a hearing as well.
Did you have some news about what the Department of Transportation might be doing soon too?
Yes.
If you can share that.
Yeah, so DOT just released a press release that included that they will be changing all of the names of the street signs as well as freeway signs to reflect the correct spelling of these names of our street signs, like Waianae with the Okina after the I and Waianae. So that's exciting. A lot of my constituents, who largely are Native Hawaiian, are very excited about it. We have received a lot of praise to hear about that. And that came also through DOT taking the initiative themselves, because we also introduced bills to do that. But we weren't able to successfully pass it, but they took it on their own.
So sometimes it's not necessary to pass laws. We can actually encourage agencies to do that. I love that. I love that tactic. So Chair Gates, you talked about creative workforce. Can you share with me some of the things that you're starting to have conversations about?
Yes, so one of the great organizations that I've been blessed to work with is the Hawaii Art Alliance. The director is Terry Skillman, and she's been very influential on how we are running this committee, because they are really on the ground doing the work with the artists, with our community, and they see the needs. And one of the needs is, how do we support them to be sustainable in this type of environment, with the cost of living being so high, with art supplies being expensive, and just also trying to get them prepared to be able to benefit off of the programs that we have, such as the PUA program and so forth, that a lot of artists weren't able to capitalize on because they just didn't have all the paperwork and so forth. So that's something that we want to see us strengthen by creating a streamlined process to be able for artists to be able to get all their paperwork in order, as well as to benefit off of any type of employment that can be created through the creative industry.
I really appreciate you taking up this work, because the last time we talked, we knew how devastated the arts community was during COVID because of the shutdowns. And I will say, this past weekend and this coming weekend, with COVID restrictions dropping across the state, people are going back to in-person performances. There's going to be a ballet performance here. There's going to be concerts coming up, Broadway in Hawaii. So all of these things are part of that kind of workforce development, strengthening of that industry. We have to promote all of those things to make sure that they can continue to perform in person, right?
Yes, and we understand that the creative industry also contributes to our economy greatly. There's many reports that indicate they are a decent percentage of the GDP in our state. So respecting that, and also knowing that we all love art, right? Who doesn't love a good music? Who doesn't love, a nice hula show? It's all those kind of things that also keep us and keep Hawaii the culture it is. So I'm very supportive of that. I'm looking forward to working with the creative industry as we move forward.
Yeah, I think the work is so important, and as we're going to look later on at what HISAM is doing, but all of these creative communities, they did such amazing things during COVID that they can hopefully continue as well. The outreach that they did digitally, Honolulu Theater for Youth did some amazing programs. We just saw it everywhere, right? Was there something that you liked in particular that you saw?
Yeah, I think the triennial is happening this year, and so it's a big event. Over 60 artists participating in this event. It's within, I think, 7 locations, and so it's really a way to bring all of this together and showcase to the world, because it's international, that we have a lot to offer when it comes into the creative and culture and arts.
Yeah, it's a collaboration, right, of a number of museums. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that when we talk with JJ at HISAM. But I want to leave you with one last comment and maybe sharing information. Art at the Capitol. So we have all these great pieces of art on our walls. We had Art at the Capitol for several years before COVID, and it had to go online for the last 2 years. But is there some exciting news about Art at the Capitol?
Yes, very exciting exciting news. So this year, Art at the Capitol will be in person
Yay.
here at the Capitol. And I think that the community is going to love the different arts that are in all of our offices. And a lot of us have local artists as well. So it's really nice to see a plethora of different artists inside of our Capitol, as well as all the people contributing to it.
So give me the date for Art at the Capitol.
So it's April 1st. So
April 1st.
Please mark your calendars.
Yes. All right. So we're going to take a break. We're going to spotlight one more museum. Again, this is the Hawaii State Art Museum, who we visited during COVID, but we wanted to go back and see what they're doing now that COVID restrictions are lifting. We just finished our great talk story with Paula at Iolani Palace. So let's head on over to Hawaii State Art Museum and meet up with JJ. So I'm here this morning with JJ, and we are here at the beautiful Haisam Lanai overlooking this awesome sculpture garden. Tell me a little bit about the space.
Welcome to the Hawaii State Art Museum, the People's Museum where we're always free. There is so much going on, and as restrictions are lifted, tonight will be the last night that we have the vax card, requirement to enter the state building. After that, we'll still require masks inside, but every first Friday we've got events opening up now at Hawaii State Art Museum and throughout Chinatown. And then every second Friday we're having jazz night. So the jazz band, we have Dave on and his house band, and every jazz night they bring in musicians, professional jazz musicians.
And this is family friendly and free.
Family friendly and free.
Awesome.
And that's just what's going on outside. We're launching the whole triennial exhibition in the galleries and it'll be open for a year.
Okay. And Triennial is a collaboration between multiple museums in the community. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, the Hawaii Triennial has 7 exhibition sites all throughout Oahu.
What are some of the things that you learned from the COVID period when we were shut down?
If people worked hard before COVID, they were able to work hard through COVID. If they weren't productive before COVID, then it was difficult during COVID. So COVID for art administration was seamless.
And you guys did so much to actually put things out there in the community. I mean, I felt like we were always connected and we could get access to the beautiful things here.
I think people recognize that during difficult times, your brain really matters, and one really important way of addressing mental health is engaging in creative practice, right? It helps your communication skills, your collaborative skills, your creative thinking, and helps you understand who you are by engaging in creative work. So we've been working hard on that, especially with the schools.
All right, so let's go see the scholastic work as well as the triennial exhibits. Thank you.
The State Foundation on Culture and the Arts is proud to support the Triennial because we share the belief that art and cultural engagement are critical to the educational, economic, and social well-being of individuals, communities, and our state. Hawaii State Art Museum is committed to providing a space where the people of Hawaii, visitors, and the arts community can gather, share ideas, and express their creativity.
Tell me a little bit about the work that you've done with the schools, and you're going to show me a little bit later some of the scholastic art that even through the pandemic, students are continuing to produce, and Haisam is part of that partnership.
Absolutely. So we, with support of Hawaii Community Foundation, work in over 111 public and charter schools doing Artists in the Schools, where we bring in teaching artists to work in those campuses. And then this year we're doing, and every year we do, a scholastic art and writing exhibit, which is 7 through 12 graders, public, private, charter, homeschool, all creating work. So this year we have over 2,000 entries, and we included roughly 230 works of art.
I'm just so impressed with the kind of work that you've been able to create. As you're looking towards your future and towards going to college, any thoughts that you would share with other aspiring artists?
I guess just the main advice is to not give up and to keep drawing and painting, and looking at references or inspiration images is also very helpful. And I guess just to draw and do what makes you happy and inspires you.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to Talk Story with House Majority. Joining me today with Chair Cedric Gates is Vice Chair Adrian Tam. So the House Committee on Culture and the Arts is also the House Committee on Culture, Arts, and International Affairs. And just because it's 2022 and we've had the rockiest 2 years of our lives, it shouldn't, I guess, come as a surprise, but the House took an important measure last week, Friday. If you could speak to it, Representative Tam, as the introducer of the resolution related to Ukraine.
Yes. So last week, Friday, the House took a very, very bold move by taking a stand when it comes to the conflict of Ukraine and Russia. I think what was bold about it was that we sent it straight to the floor, and we didn't need a committee hearing because we knew that Russia was moving so quickly. You know, as a history major, I can tell you that, you know, this means a lot because we've seen this before, and the events that led up to this has happened in the past. So I think that it was the right thing for us to do, and like I've mentioned it in the past, it was a moral obligation for us.
Well, thank you for leading this effort, because I think many of us are concerned. So as the Culture and Arts and International Affairs Committee, how is some of this unrest kind of playing out in the committee work that you're seeing? Or maybe in looking at ways to improve relationships at a time when relationships are falling apart?
Yeah, so Hawaii is home to a very, very vibrant and strong Ukrainian community. Many of them came to Hawaii as farmers. And for us to take a stand, it meant a lot to them. Valeria Kramhaus, who gave the remarks at the press conference last week, Friday, you know, we often forget that, you know, she wasn't technically born in the Ukraine. She was born under the Soviet Union when the Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. And to tell you how young Ukraine is, Ukraine's only 1 year older than I am. And it really reminds us of how important it is to protect independent sovereign democracies and how at any given moment it could be under attack. So it was very important for us to take on this important resolution to take a stand. And I think I mentioned it. You know, we chose the side of peace and unity and democracy over aggression. And it really meant a lot to our community because we want to show to Hawaii that as a house, we are the people's house and we take a stand on these important issues, and that we stand by a community that it has had many sleepless nights over what's been happening.
So Chair Gates, you know, any thoughts on the Ukrainian issues? I mean, I go home every day and just turn on CNN. I'm just watching, and things are happening so fast. But any thoughts that you wanted to share with our viewers about, you know, the Ukraine and what Hawaii is going to be doing?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I would think I'd be more interested in like local state politics, but I really watch what's happening internationally. I'm very intrigued by what's going on. And of course, when I seen the Ukraine and Russia feud going, it was alarming because we know what can happen. As Vice Chair Tam mentioned, you know, this could be the start of a world war. And I think about all of the family and friends we have in the military that may be shipped out if things hit the fan. But, you know, for me, it's about standing up for democracy. Many people don't have the privilege of living in a democratized nation, and so for us it means a lot. And of course Hawaii is very democratic as well as a party, but we definitely need to make sure that any threat against any sovereign democracy is taken seriously, because that could mean that we're next as well. It just, you know, you just never know. And so it's very scary.
Yeah, and some of the conversation on the floor when the resolution came up was discussions about what's happening in China and Taiwan and the South China Sea. And so the fight against autocracy is not just the Russian autocrats, but it's the concerns in parts of Asia.
Yeah.
Rep. Tam, did you want to comment on any of that?
Yeah, you know, many people may know or be surprised to know that my family is from Taiwan and we have very deep connections. I still have family members there. And when we see something like this happen, it hits very close to us because at any given time, China can come in and invade this sovereign democracy in right next to them. You know, we see China exercising their warplanes in the Taiwanese Strait right now. And it's very worrisome. I think at the end of the day, we want to maintain peace. We don't want fighting. We don't want to lose any Chinese soldiers' lives or Taiwanese soldiers' lives or any Russian soldiers' lives or Ukrainian soldiers' lives. We want to maintain peace and stability in every corner of the world right now.
Well, I appreciate again the House position that you folks helped us craft and lead for the state. You know, shifting to other things in your committees, you know, sister city relationships are one of the ways in which we can build relationships. Is there any sister city relationships that we're looking to build?
Yeah. So of course we want to try to branch out and make sure that we create connections across the world to, of course, promote Hawaii and also learn from the rest of the world. And as being the International Affairs Committee, one of the things that I took to heart is what Hokulea did when they went on their voyage, and they really was able to bring a piece of Hawaii to all these different countries, and you could just see the response and the reaction. It was very positive, and that's something that I look for inspiration to. And what we are doing right now is looking at Pacific Islands and how we can create more formal relationships with them. And so one of the sister state relations resolutions we're pushing is New Zealand is creating a sister state between Auckland and Hawaii, and being able to basically showcase all the cultural aspects of this, even the economy and all of the you know, good things that are being done in New Zealand, but also in Hawaii, and taking that to be able to learn more from it.
I think that sharing and fostering of information is so important, and then the similarities, right, in New Zealand and Hawaiian history, but also we're looking at a sister city relationship in Portugal. So we're not not going to ignore Europe. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Yes, we are looking, and we're working very closely with the honorary consulate from Portugal here, and we're going to introduce a resolution for a specific province where they have very close ties with the Hawaii community here. Many people in Hawaii are actually descendants of Portuguese immigrants. And I think it's very important to have the sister city relationship, not just, you know, for the benefit of our economy, but for cultural exchange. You know, we often talk about the importance of preserving culture, and that's what these sister city relationships do, and sister state relationships do. And, you know, we don't ever want that to just go in and die in the wind. We want to preserve that and to have that exchange continuously for a very long time.
So we could talk a lot about a lot of stuff, and we're leaving a lot of stuff off the table because Rep. Tam, I also know that you work on the Health and Human Services and Homelessness Committee, but we'll save that for another time. We have about a minute left, and I wanted to leave both of you with an opportunity, one last takeaway message as we are heading into first crossover. Representative Tam first.
I'm really excited for a lot of the bills that we are sending out this year. You know, we have done a lot of good work, from working families relief to the $600 million for DHHL. And the initiatives that we are championing in our committee, both of our committees, when it comes to access to Hawaiian language and ohana zones and help for the houseless communities. I think that what makes it more exciting is that the building's going to reopen as of today, actually.
Yes.
And I'm excited to welcome my community to my office, to their office, to talk about some of the issues that are important to them. I love to hear from them. I get their emails, I get their phone calls, and I'm excited to have that one-on-one conversation with them in my office. So that's my biggest takeaway and the thing that I'm looking forward to the most.
Representative Gates, Chair Gates, how
Yes,
about you?
same thing. I'm very excited to hear that we have the Capitol reopening and seeing it reopen. I had a constituent come today, so that was nice. And I think that, you know, it also speaks to having open government in general and being able to get back from COVID and try to return to some sense of normalcy. And so I'm very excited about that, and I want to make sure that our community knows that they're welcomed here and that they should come and speak their voices and that we are here listening, trying to do the work of the people.
Thank you, Chair Gates. Thank you, Vice Chair Tam, for being my first legislative guest on the first episode of the third season of Talk Story. Thank you to our viewers for joining us here. We're going to be closing with a video shot for the reopening of the state capitol, which was today, March 7th. We want to welcome everyone back to the Capitol, and please stay tuned for more information about our next Talk Story, which will be happening in April, I believe sometime after Art at the Capitol. But we will be sharing all the information of upcoming events with you at our website and our Instagram and Facebook feed for Hawaii House Democrats at High House Dems. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We've been busy preparing the Capitol for you to join us, beginning Monday, March 7th.
COVID-19 screening stations have been set up on the street level and in the basement of the Capitol building.
Please bring your COVID vaccination card or negative test result and a government-issued ID to enter the building.
Also, please wear a face covering when in the Capitol, even in our hallways and at the railings.
Conference rooms have been reconfigured to provide seating for testifiers.
Or if you prefer, you can still testify at hearings by video conference from your home or office.
We look forward to seeing you March 7th, 2022.
See you soon.